Kathleen Cooke. Welcome to Influence Women and the Influence Women webinar. We're excited tonight to have Shirin Tabor with us with Empower Women Media. We know this is going to be a fabulous night, and you're going to learn so much about how to advocate for that passion project that you have. Also, Shirin's going to be sharing with us about how she has been advocating for religious freedom and for women's rights globally. So it's going to be a great and interesting evening. Let me tell you just a little bit about what we'll be discussing, though. We're going to be discussing how to navigate gender equality, how to help displaced people, how to create conflict resolutions as our beliefs collide globally. And are there ways for us to use media effectively to bring solutions? Those are the kind of things we're going to be talking about tonight. So let me tell you a little bit about Shirin. Shirin is an Iranian American and directs Empower Women Media. She is the author of Muslims Next Door and the co-author of Islam and North America. With a background in media cross-cultural training, Shirin assists multiple organizations with faith-based initiatives. She's been written about in the Los Angeles Times, the Seattle Times, the Detroit Free Press, Christianity Today, and Jerusalem Post. They've all featured her work because of the way she has been able to advocate both for Muslims and Christians and coming together for religious freedom. Shirin is passionate about educating audiences about the benefits of religious freedom and to build thriving societies in the Middle East. She leads annual media training forums, a women's film festival, and an online religious freedom e-course called Live What You Believe. Additionally, Shirin directs annual leadership events among government businesses, academics, media, NGOs, and faith leaders to promote women's empowerment and religious liberty. She's a graduate of the University of Washington and has 2 master's degrees in intercultural studies. She speaks English, Farsi, and French, so she's well-versed in what God's called her into today. Check out her website at empowerwomen.media. We're so thrilled to have Shirin with us tonight. Shirin, come on and tell us about who you are a little bit. So thankful to have you with us tonight.
Yeah, so we have been working in media since the early 2000s. We were part of the Jesus Film Project and a thing called the Dema Film Festival. And so we were heavily steeped in a world of production and especially short film content. And we saw the power of short films and how in just a moment you could shift someone's heart. Just a beautiful little 3, 4, 5-minute film could convey an important subject or even help people to overcome a taboo, a subject that maybe they thought, oh, that was kind of taboo, but then they saw it in a short film and then we saw their hearts change. And so taking our training, I thought, wow, what if we could, move the needle on religious freedom and human rights? What if we could begin to shift the culture through storytelling and short provocative films? And so about 5 years ago, actually 7 years ago, we started Empower Women Media. And what we do is we offer a media training. We offer a women's film competition, the only religious freedom film competition in the world. And then we provide leadership events or film screenings where we can showcase the films. And we've had a lot of success in really tough countries like Pakistan or Afghanistan, where normally you think, oh, there's no way we could share this message of religious freedom. But we found through storytelling, as the women tell their short stories about why religious freedom is so important to them, for peace, for finding a job, for travel, for self-expression, those films really resonate with the audience. So we found that short films have been a very effective tool to share ideas, concepts that might normally be a little taboo in some cultures, but then people, by seeing it, not just telling them, but showing them the benefits of religious freedom, it's more palatable.
Yes. Well, and we know the power of video and the power of a picture these days. We all have cell phones. We all have screens. They say now that the average global viewer is on TikTok 4.5 hours a day. and on Facebook 5.2 hours a day. And so they're watching out there on the internet.
Yes.
That's sometimes their only way of actually seeing the outside world. And as these
Yes.
women are more isolated and not able to get out because they're women, they're getting online a lot more. They're getting on social media a lot more. And so teaching them how to use social media, how to use a camera on their phone to be able to tell their story and communicate out is really essential today. It's really strategic. Tell us a little bit more about the film festival that you've created.
Yes. Well, it just kind of fell in our lap about, let's see, 2018. I was able to intersect with a gentleman who was working with the United Nations and the State Department. And I said, I love the work you're doing on religious freedom. How can we help you, expand this? And he goes, well, I need media and I need women. And so we started dreaming, and he said, what if we start a film festival where women can tell their stories? It's not just something you read about in the news, but women are speaking up for themselves. And so essentially we started the film festival in 2018. At first it was kind of small. We just had like 5 or 10 films. And now it's to the point where we have over 100 films that have been produced. We do train like a cohort of women each year so that they can understand the benefits of religious freedom and kind of give them a prompt and some guidelines for creating their films. Because a lot of people don't understand what is religious freedom. As Americans, we pretty much understand it, but imagine if you lived in a country where it was completely a foreign concept. The films are beautiful. They tell stories of women who are athletes, women who are traveling for the first time, women who are getting jobs, and also cross-cultural, like maybe a Muslim woman hiring a Christian woman, and just the beauty of collaboration that as women, regardless of our faith identity, we can still help each other and raise the station of women together. So they're meant to be films that inspire and again, shift the hearts to understand the benefits of living in a free and democratic society where religious freedom is one of the major pillars. So it's doing great. Our films have been shown at the United Nations and at the State Department events. They've been recognized in multiple TV outlets and news stations in that part of the world. We're really grateful. And I think it is kind of, people are intrigued. Women's Film Festival. They're like, wow, that's cool. Tell us more.
Yeah, absolutely. And we were privileged several years ago at one of our Influence Women's Hollywood events to be there with Ambassador Cooke, who had been the ambassador during 9/11 when the Twin Towers fell. And she told the story of what happened and the need for us to be ambassadors back for those who were Islamic, the Muslims in the world, even today, who felt that they had been compromised from that attack in their faith, and how the Christians and the Muslims came together, and the importance of being able to live together in a free world and culture here in the United States that we take for granted, as you said, so easily. So we were really excited to be able to award her that film festival award that night at our event. So it's wonderful. And I love the work that you're doing ongoing with teaching the women specifically how to communicate well through video. There are some, technical aspects to it. There are, I know, several things that have to be communicated and how that they can tell their story effectively. There are so many women out there that follow us with Influence Women who are passionate about something. Maybe it's building, water wells in a third world country, or advocating for pro-life, or against or anti-trafficking issues. Some of those things that we're passionate about. What would you tell a woman today who is sitting at home tonight watching this, that has a passion for something that she would like to create a short film for, or would like to be a writer for or a director for, that she could create content. How do they begin, Shirin? How would you tell
Yes.
someone to begin?
Yes. Well, the way I begin is I try to find the intersection of my passion or an interest with a need in society. And what I call that is finding the gap. Finding the gap. It's where no one else is shining a light on that, and I can shine a light on it. And because I'm the only one doing it, it all of a sudden gives you notoriety and attention because you're doing something that no one else is doing. And so for me, it was religious freedom because it made sense. It was something I knew as a child, and I was fascinated by the subject. And I thought, wow, how can we encourage more women to have religious freedom in the world? I was lucky to have my dad, but millions and millions of girls in the Muslim world don't have a dad like I did. And so how can we help them find religious freedom? And so we just started, creating these little short films, and they were very focused, and we had a prompt and guidelines and so forth. But I would say, yeah, figure out what is it, something that you're passionate about and meets a specific need. So even if it's water, where are the greatest needs and what is the most interesting story you could tell? Or maybe it's something else. Maybe it's the gun crisis, or it's the drug crisis, or it's, education, or working with disabled people. Figure out what you just will get you out of bed in the morning and you're just passionate about, and you want to capture those stories. But find the gap. Don't go where thousands of people are already going to tell stories. Find your own unique platform, I would say.
I often say
Jesus told
Peter to throw his net to the other side of the boat, right?
Yes,
We have to
exactly.
throw it to the other side of the boat.
Yes,
And then
yes.
also, Shirin, I've often said it. Yeah, we have this passion for that, but it's a passion of something we actually hate. We hate the way women are trafficked or men are trafficked. We hate that people can't get fresh water, or that guns are killing our children and our citizens around the United States. So how then how we can take our talents as writers, producers, actors, and God's given us those talents, but we take that and we look at something that we actually hate.
Yes.
And that becomes what God calls us to fix.
I totally agree.
We use then those skills and talents then to be able to fix the issues and be able to create these films and projects and content that can get us out of bed in the morning, like you said, and motivate us, because those are the things that I think God calls us to. Again, going back to our early conversation, I think sometimes the things that we see and pay attention to as a child, those are the things that God has resonated already in our lives. I laughingly say too that I was raised in Las Vegas. I was raised behind the big bright lights of the Strip, but I saw what happened behind those strip lights all the time, and when they were turned off, and the devastation that happened to many families who had come to kind of seek their fame and fortune there, and it wasn't going to happen. And I believe that prepared me for Hollywood and where I am today, and working with the people I work here in behind the bright lights here in Hollywood as well. And so I think God again prepares us to do that. So really pay attention almost to what you hate, because God's called you to fix what you hate.
Yes.
So
I agree.
So true.
Agree. Yes, because it will be hard. I mean, as you know, in media, there's so many challenges, so many mountains to climb, and you have to be so resilient. And so it has to be something that you just have a fire in your belly, like you really feel strongly about it, because maybe you think it's water, maybe you think it's, education, but then after 3 or 4 months, it kind of, fades, right? So I think it does take some soul searching and really, as you say, go back to your origin story, your childhood, your places of pain. Where does that intersect with the greatest needs in society? And it can just be one thing. You don't need to do everything. Just do one thing and do it well. Do it very well.
Absolutely. Yeah. So well said. Yeah. Yeah. And write it down. Write down those thoughts, and pray about who you can bring alongside you. Maybe you're a writer, but you need a director, or maybe you're a director and you need a writer, or you're an actor. So pray about where where you might find those sources. I believe that when God calls you to something bigger than this, he's going to also provide for you and send you to those sources. I've marveled at the way God's brought people into your life and into the work that you're doing to see it blossom and bloom the way it has. It's only God could do that, right? Only he could do that.
I agree.
Love it. Love it. One of the things that I want to touch on a little bit too tonight is the way you've advocated and brought in not just Christians, but you've brought in Islamic believers, non-believers,
and
Jewish people, and Hindu people, and all sorts of faiths. You brought in government officials to advocate for this, because this isn't just a one culture, one religion issue. It affects us all globally. How have you been able to navigate that? Can you talk about that just a little bit on how you were able to move into that?
Yes. So one of the things I do is as you said, writing down, I'm very keen on writing out almost like a business plan or a proposal before I begin a project. And it's almost like a covenant before the Lord. I write everything down and I get to the very end, which is, what are your hope for outcomes? What are your expectations? How are you going to distribute this content? Oftentimes women will have a great story, but they don't have a distribution plan. They don't really think about, where is this going to be in 5 years? They're just so excited about their story. And so as I started to unpack this strategy, I realized we could not do it alone as Christians. And imagine if you were a minority in America. Let's imagine that only 2% of people in America were Christians. We could not do this alone. We would have to reach out to Muslims and secular people and Jewish people and people of other faith and the government to exist, right? And so as I reflected on what is the outcome that we need, I realized that Christians who are heavily persecuted in the Middle East cannot fight this battle alone. They need their Muslim neighbors or Jewish neighbors or secular neighbors to join with them back to back to promote democracy, religious freedom, and human rights. I believe as Christians, we can lead the way because we have the hope and we have the tools and we have the Holy Spirit. But to have a free and open democratic society, we need to work, all of us together. All of us have to work together. And I've been amazed by how many people who are born Muslim or Jewish, they get it. They don't want the state telling them what to believe. And they want diversity and they want freedom even inside their own faith community. So this is a message I think it's really resonating with more and more people, that we're living in a time where there are systems at place and dictators and authoritarian governments that are trying to really squelch our freedoms universally. And so we need to find people of peace and multi-faith champions that will stand with us. Ultimately, my heart is to keep the doors open for the church. My heart is to counter persecution of believers in the Middle East. And I want to restore the church in the Middle East. 20, 30 years ago, 20% of the Middle East was Christian. Now it's down to like 5%. I mean, think about America in 20 years if we were only 5% Christian. So it is a prospect we need to consider. So we need to start building strategies to anticipate, as persecution comes, how can we keep the doors open for the church? We saw a little bit of that during the pandemic, didn't we? Where the churches were literally shut down. I never thought in my lifetime I'd ever see that. So we're getting glimpses of what could happen. Therefore, we need to start planning and anticipating and building strategies to protect the church, not only in the US, but around the world.
Yes, I love that. And strategy is so important, and thinking ahead. So often the church has been negligible in being behind so often, instead of being in the forefront, being the innovator of that. And so I so agree with you. We need to be out in front, don't we, and creating these things. One of the things that I think resonated so much for me and I was so impressed with when I was with you at the Washington Press Club this last fall, and you were bringing in, all these leaders and government officials and different religions together, was the fact that there was unity in the room over this.
Yes.
And so often in our culture today that is so against everything and opposite ends of things, that we were able to actually come together as one united front to be able to accomplish where we were in the places God had put us, to be able to move the dial forward. And it was very impressive. I was very impressed being there and hearing from the various people and hearing their hearts, hearing the stories of so many of them that have been persecuted. And so tell us a little bit, if you would, for a minute. Can you share a story of maybe one of the women that you've worked with that has created a short film, has been in a situation where the work you've done has been able to turn things around?
Yes, definitely. Well, so normally I share stories about Christian women, but I think tonight it would be fascinating to hear about a Muslim woman that we have helped train, and we created a film. And she said, Shirin, I go back to Pakistan and it breaks my heart how they persecute Christians or Muslim people. And she said, I spent 25 years in America. I love America. And I want those same freedoms back home in my country. And so she has gone to imams and to Muslim clerics and said, listen, if you want to come to America and enjoy all the benefits here, then you need to extend the same benefits back home in Pakistan to Christians and to minorities there. And so as a result, she made this beautiful film sharing how she had experienced religious freedom in America and how much she wants that in Pakistan. I mean, it's an incredible concept and so bold. And she has been attacked for it because they think she's too much of a freedom thinker. But she gets it. She's like, this is democracy. We cannot have one religion telling us how to live our lives. Even in America, we couldn't have one church, right, telling us how we should live our faith. So I guess my point is that we were able to train her to create this beautiful short film, and now she's using it and advocating it and sharing on social media. She uses it at speaking engagements, and she uses that film to open doors. She actually visits multiple countries now and visits with ambassadors sharing this message of religious freedom. So we call her a multi-faith champion. She's not a Christian, but she is a person of peace working with us to keep the doors open. And then for Christian women, we empower them in the Middle East to tell their stories and why they deserve equal rights and to have inclusive citizenship and to be a part of society. Just because they're a minority, they shouldn't be shut in. They have talents and all kinds of things to share to help society flourish.
Yes, I love that. And, one thing that we've taught with our nonprofit, the Influence Lab, so often is that we need to be teaching the boots on the ground there. There's nothing more powerful than a person who is part of the culture, who knows the environment that they are working within, who is trusted by the people around them, and that can then advocate well. And of course, again, going back, we are a visual society and culture today. So if we can teach these women how to advocate from where they are and what they understand and what they can do from their cultural background, from their influence in where they are, it's so much more powerful than us coming in with, our American viewpoints and our American culture. There's nothing more powerful than the person who's actually one of them, isn't there?
Yes, an insider,
so
cultural insider.
Yes, very much so. As we begin to wind things down, and we're going to be bringing the women into the chat room. Last question for you tonight is: you are a powerful woman yourself and an influencer, but what empowers you when you are in challenging situations? What have you found that has resonated in your life, that when you get into difficult situations and places where you don't know where the next money is going to come from or how you're going to do the next thing, where do you go?
Yes. Well, I go back to the Lord and his faithfulness, and I remember what he's done. And I try to go back to major events and think, wow, if he did that, what could he do next? And so I ruminate and think about, just some highlights, take time to think about all the great things he's done. And I do have some monuments of where he just did these amazing things that I know I could not have done in my own power. And then I'm like, okay, Lord, I want to trust you for more next time. An example of that was I was able to be a mentor for the George Bush Institute and to help mentor 14 women from Tunisia. And at the time I was like, oh, who am I to do this? I don't have any experience. And the Lord put me there and we had a fantastic time and we saw great results. And so I thought, okay, I'm going to trust you for more and more and more. So this summer, in fact, we're leading a leadership seminar about religious freedom in Marrakesh, Morocco.
Yes.
And we're just by faith, because we've done it in the past, let's do it again. And I didn't know who would sign up, but we found a beautiful Arab marketing woman, and she helped us. We have over 130 women signed up. They're CEOs, directors, executives, government people from the embassy that are coming. And so I think as you cast the vision and you go forth boldly, just like you, Kathleen, you're such a great role model. You just go for it. Yeah, you go for it. And I find that the people are looking for leaders. And if you lead with boldness and courage and a smile on your face, people will follow. They will. And so we just keep going. And even funding, I would have to say that funding is getting easier. It was really hard in the early years, especially for women. It's getting easier because we've got momentum. We're building trust. We have built a brand. People know we're reliable. We have proof of concept through all of our short films now and our trainings. So I feel like sky's the limit, that we just need to keep going. And God will provide the funds and the people will come.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Faithful in the little things, and he'll give you the big things, right?
Yes.
And I believe with each thing that we were given, that our faith is built even stronger. And so as we build, it's like the building blocks. We're building those faith walls almost, I would say, our gumption to go on and to create more and to do more. So love that, Shirin, and so proud of you for all that you've done and how God has just blessed it and grown it. But it is a lot of hard work and it is a lot of stress and worry. And so we don't negate that we are human from time to time, but that he's still with us. He'll never leave us or forsake us. Him always. So great. I'm going to bring Ayana in. I know we have some people in the chat room that have been asking some questions. And so Ayana, come on in and welcome Shirin and tell us what's going on in the chat room and some of the questions that are coming in.
Yes. So first off, such a dynamic conversation. Thank you, Shirin. First question for you. What advice could you give to those creators who are looking to communicate intelligently to women or people in other languages or even other cultures? What should we be sensitive to as we're creating and developing these?
Yes, that's a great question. And we have to address that regularly. So what I say is, you can have a great vision, but you need to surround yourself with counselors and cultural advisors. So an example would be, is we're getting ready to do a production for the country of Nigeria. I've never been there. I don't know much about Nigerian culture. I know they have Nollywood and they have a film industry. So rather than writing my scripts and just hoping things work out, we start with our cultural advisors. We get people together in a Zoom call. We do a survey. We ask questions. We say, we're thinking about doing this project. What do you think? And then once we write the scripts, we put them in front of them and we ask them to read the scripts and edit them and revise them. We have them look at our slide deck, our cast, our branding, our coloring, everything. So essentially, we invite internationals to come into the process with us. And they are great for distribution because when the film is done and their names are in the credits, they're so excited to share it with their friends, right? And their community. So we use the research development process to also on the back end be the distribution process. Those people who helped us on the front end will very likely help us on the back end to distribute the content and get it out to their communities. So again, it goes back to strategy. You have to have a story, but you have to have a strategy with the story to be effective and fruitful.
Right. Okay, great. So getting counsel as you're developing, asking advisors, and then partnering with people both in development as well as on the back end, because those
Yes.
partnerships can also help to distribute.
Yes.
Thank
Good student.
you. Quick recaps always helps to remember. Okay, so another question is from Nancy Rivera. What genre, medium, and channel could be used to infiltrate or its cultures, I guess, or to reach cultures that are difficult to reach, whether it's because of politics, maybe lack of technology, other things or barriers? What have you found to be effective, mediums or channels to reach those audiences?
Yes. Well, social media is number one. It's the cheapest and the fastest way. So again, I go back to strategy. I would ask, what is the need that you want to provide a solution for? And then you create that plan. You think, okay, I want to address, women's rights in a particular country, in India. And then you think about what's the fastest, quickest way to do that. And it really is social media. It can be as simple as just maybe 10 to 15 graphics, beautiful photographs with interesting captions, and then leads people to a film or to reading a website or listening to Influence Labs. So, you need to know what is it you want to accomplish, and then think of the most effective, cost-effective way to do that. A lot of us don't have access to big budgets to create beautiful films, but you could start with just a few photographs and captions. And then as you build trust, funding will come. People will say, hey, she's onto something here. Let's give her some funding to make a short film and then a feature length or a documentary. So start small, prove yourself that you're committed and loyal. And then over time, you'll see more projects will come your way.
Shirin, that reminds me of a story that I was told about a group who was working in the Middle East, where most women can't have internet access or are not allowed to have it, but they're allowed to have it if they go to a hotel room or hotel for the evening. And so they've put together beauty nights, and they've invited women to come for a beauty night, and where they, have people come in that will do their nails or their hair or talk about skincare or some things like that. But then a part of that, then they also talk about the beauty of God and the beauty of who he is in their lives, and share how Jesus tells us that we are wonderfully and beautifully made, and share a bit about Jesus that way. And so and then they have the access then in the hotel room to some of the internet series that are out there that they've been able to download and create, that many of the ministries have been able to put together for women. And so that has created these women's groups and generated many decisions for Jesus through these beauty nights. So just a creative way of doing something like that.
I love it. Being innovative.
Yes.
And women are good at that. We find ways to uncover things. Yeah, that's really good.
Yeah, it's a great idea.
Yes.
Okay, another question. So often, some Christians, more so in the West, could be resistance towards engaging with people of other faiths. In your discovery, Shirin, what have you found are the most significant commonalities between Christians and Muslims that one could use to build a foundation of a relationship?
Yeah.
What could leave a lasting impression?
Yes.
Even to salvation.
Yes, I get that. Yeah, I think, we call them people of peace. So if someone is not a Christian, I always ask myself, is this a person of peace? Is this someone who genuinely cares about their family and society? And they want all the same things that we want. They want their kids to go to school and be safe. They want to have a job. They want to get along with their neighbors and have barbecue at 4th of July. Those people are everywhere. I live in Southern California, and we have on our street, we have an Indian from, a Hindu from India. We have Chinese who are probably former communists. So we have Iranians and Arabs. Everyone's here. So we have to get along. Our kids go to the same school. And, when it is 4th of July, we're all like wanting to get together and do something. So it's a very human thing to want to be together. And I think we get scared when we think, well, what if they're Muslim? Like, how do we find common ground? Well, I can tell you that Muslims and Jews and Christians, we call them the Abrahamic faiths, that we actually share the Old Testament and many of the Old Testament stories, especially, Abraham and then Moses and the prophets. So I would say start with our core values, our common faith stories, and the fact that we all want to live in this world together peacefully, and we care about our kids, so find the common ground, common values, and start there, and a belief in God. That's a great place to start. So, again, it doesn't mean you need to worship with Muslims. You don't need to pray with them. You don't need to read scripture with them. But when it comes to building a civil society, living in democracy, having human rights, women's rights, find those common values and build on that. And it's beautiful. It's so exciting when you're like, oh, you get that too? That's important to you too. And it's invigorating. And then you just build on that. You build content on those things you have in common. And it's a great segue to the gospel. I guess I was going to say that, to segue to the gospel, because they will inquire. They'll say, how do you do this? Where does this come from? And I can say, it comes from my relationship with Christ. They know I'm a Christian because I'm very upfront that, I have a Muslim father, a Christian mother, and then they want to know more. And then I share my testimony. But ultimately, I think they do sit back and go, wow, where does the courage come from? Where does this, the tenacity, the stick-to-itiveness, those are things that come from something more than yourself, right? I call it the Holy Spirit. So they are curious. They will ask. Yeah.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, you lead them to who Jesus is, don't you? And let Jesus do the rest, right? The Holy Spirit do the rest.
Yes.
And so many of them, I know, Shirin, you have story after story of so many of them coming to Christ through dreams and visions, and that the Holy Spirit will speak to them. And we just have to lead them to who Jesus is, basically, and the commonality, right, of God. And they do like to be prayed with. They're used to praying all the time. They're very used to that. And so praying to God, the Father is a great place to start, and they will embrace prayer. So I found that as well. So last question, Ayana.
It is a little, just to follow up on Shirin, what you were saying, as filmmakers here in the US, right? As we're making films, what can we, do to promote that religious freedom? And as you talked earlier about being strategic about making sure these are things that we will continue to have. And I think you touched on it a little bit, but even if, I wonder if you have any thoughts for us filmmakers, if the theme isn't necessarily overtly for religious freedom, but are there ways we can, in the way that we're cultivating or creating our projects or developing or working with people, ways that we can promote, an atmosphere or a spirit of collaboration or a respect in that way? If you had any thoughts on that.
Yeah, no, I think we're living in a time, and even I would say the liberal culture is realizing that there are so many restrictions. And so we need to go back to our First Amendment and the Constitution and what this nation was founded on. And many of them are Christian values and principles. And so I think we can weave that in, that we're living in a time where there's so much anxiety and people are really questioning about the future parents are. The older generation is wondering, like, what's going to happen to America? So educate the audience and help them to remember we have gone so far from our original core values and beliefs, including the First Amendment. Freedom of this country was founded on freedom of religion. I mean, that's why we came to America. We were persecuted in Europe. Freedom of religion, freedom of press, freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, freedom to manifest your faith. These are core principles, and we can weave those in as we address the culture, but provide solutions and remind people we have the solutions. It's right there in our Constitution, and it's in our faith. It's in the Bible. So address it and give people hope. The one thing I would end with is, I'm hearing a lot of Christian friends grumbling and bickering and watching a lot of, news channels, and they're very somber. And I'm like, okay, I know we have problems, but what are the solutions? How can we work our way out of this? How can we pivot and be nimble and offer culture something and a message of hope? So I think Christians should be the greatest storytellers and the greatest hope givers. I think it's possible. We can do that through media and through film. Definitely.
Well, as we wind up, thank you so much tonight, Shirin, tonight, for being with us. What a great advocate and leader you are amongst women, doing amazing things there within women in the Middle East and where God's called you. So thank you so much for being with us tonight and sharing.